Ma'am, you need to step aside. This is first class. The flight attendant's voice cut through the cabin like ice. Every passenger turned to stare at the black woman holding a briefcase. Gate A7 at Chicago O'Hare buzzed with tension. Dr. Amara Sterling stood perfectly still, her tailored navy suit immaculate despite the chaos. The gate agent's eyes narrowed as she examined Sterling's boarding pass for the third time. "This doesn't look right," the agent muttered loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Phones appeared, cameras pointed. Whispers spread like wildfire through the boarding line. Sterling's calm voice never wavered. "I understand your concern. Please take all the time you need. Have you ever been judged before you even opened your mouth? When success becomes suspicious simply because of how you look?" These real-life stories happen daily, but this touching story of quiet power will leave you breathless, because sometimes the most powerful black stories begin with the most unexpected moments. The digital departure board glowed above Gate A7. Flight 1247 to Atlanta. Boarding, departure, 3:47 p.m. Sterling checked her phone. 3:37 p.m. 10 minutes. Gate agent Lisa Morrison, 28 and 3 months into her Delta career, held Sterling's American Express black card like it might bite her. The card scanner had beeped green twice, but Morrison's frown deepened with each swipe. "I'm going to need you to step aside until we verify this isn't stolen," Morrison announced, her voice carrying across the gate area. Sterling nodded once. "I understand your concern. I'll wait here." Her briefcase bore a subtle monogram, DS Holdings. As she set it down, her phone buzzed with urgent messages she chose to ignore. A distinctive red portfolio marked "Board Meeting Confidential" remained clutched in her other hand. Passenger Jake Chen, traveling to his sister's wedding, pulled out his phone. Something felt wrong about this scene. He opened TikTok and hit Go Live. Within seconds, his screen showed 17 viewers. "Guys, I'm at O'Hare and something crazy is happening," Chen whispered to his phone. "They're questioning this black woman's first-class ticket, even though it clearly scanned correctly." Another passenger, Maria Santos, started her own Instagram Live story. She'd witnessed too many situations like this to stay silent. Morrison picked up her desk phone, dialing internal security. "Hi, this is Gate A7. I need someone to verify a potentially fraudulent credit card." Sterling remained standing exactly where Morrison had asked her to wait. Her posture never changed. Her expression stayed neutral. But those watching closely noticed her fingers tap once against her portfolio. Just once. "Ma'am, can you provide proof of employment?" Morrison asked when she hung up. "First-class tickets are expensive. We need to verify you can afford this." The question hung in the air like smoke. Several passengers in line exchanged glances. An older white businessman shook his head visibly. "I'm happy to comply," Sterling replied. "May I ask why other passengers weren't required to provide this documentation?" Morrison's cheeks flushed. "Standard security protocol." Chen's live stream now showed 47 viewers. Comments flooded in. "This is discrimination. Call them out. Someone record this." A business card fell from Sterling's wallet as she reached for her identification. Chen zoomed in on his phone camera, catching the text. "Dr. Amara Sterling, Chief Executive Officer." "CEO of what?" Morrison demanded, reading over his shoulder. Sterling retrieved the card calmly. "A holding company." Two more passengers began filming openly. The boarding line had stopped moving entirely, everyone watching the unfolding drama. Morrison's supervisor, Tom Bradley, approached after receiving her call. 45 years old with 20 years at Delta, Bradley had handled his share of difficult passengers. He sized up the situation in 3 seconds and sided with his employee. "What seems to be the problem here?" Bradley asked Morrison, not looking at Sterling. Suspicious credit card activity and first-class boarding without proper verification, Morrison explained. Bradley nodded. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me while we sort this out. She hasn't done anything wrong, shouted a passenger from the back of the line. This is discrimination, plain and simple, added another. Chen's viewer count hit 120. Santos tagged Delta's official Instagram account in her story. Sterling's phone showed 15 missed calls from Atlanta office. She declined another incoming call without looking at the caller ID. I'm happy to cooperate fully, Sterling told Bradley. However, I do have a 4:30 meeting in Atlanta that I cannot miss. Well, that depends on how quickly we can resolve this situation, Bradley replied curtly. The departure board updated. Final boarding call, Gate A7. 3:40 p.m. Sterling opened her briefcase and removed a single document. Several passengers craned their necks to see, but she held it close to her chest. Before we proceed further, Sterling said quietly, there's something you should know. Morrison rolled her eyes. Another fake document? Chen's live stream had reached 210 viewers. Delta discrimination began trending locally in Chicago. Sterling's calm never broke. I prefer transparency. Please document everything. Truth requires witnesses. 3 TSA agents approached the gate, called by Morrison's security request. Officers Davis and Kim flanked a third agent Sterling didn't recognize. We got a call about a disturbance, Officer Davis announced. No disturbance, Sterling replied. Just a conversation about documentation requirements. Her red portfolio remained sealed. Her briefcase stayed open, contents visible to anyone who looked closely enough. But in that moment, with cameras rolling and witnesses watching, Sterling made a choice that would change everything. She smiled. Not a big smile, not a defiant smile, just a small, knowing smile that somehow made Morrison take a step backward. Officers, Sterling said, I want to be very clear. I'm cooperating fully with Delta's security protocols. I simply want to ensure that these protocols are applied equally to all passengers. The crowd murmured approval. Someone started a slow clap that died quickly. Bradley checked his watch nervously. The flight was already delayed. Corporate hated delays. Ma'am, if you could just provide the employment verification. Of course, Sterling interrupted gently. But first, may I share something that might expedite this process? She held up the document from her briefcase. The Delta logo was clearly visible at the top. Morrison squinted at the paper. What is that? Sterling's smile widened just slightly. Documentation that I think you'll find very interesting. 3:42 p.m. The final boarding announcement echoed through Gate A7 for the second time. Delta station manager Rebecca Walsh arrived breathless, her radio crackling with updates from 3 different gates. She'd been pulled from handling an international connection crisis to deal with what Bradley had described as a first-class fraud situation. Walsh barely glanced at Sterling before turning to Bradley. What's the status? Passenger can't verify employment for first-class purchase. Suspicious credit card activity. We're waiting on security verification. Sterling remained exactly where Morrison had positioned her, but now she held the Delta-branded document visibly in her right hand. Her phone continued buzzing with ignored calls. Chen's TikTok live stream had grown to 500 viewers. His whispered commentary became unnecessary as viewers flooded the comments with their own outrage. This is insane, Chen murmured to his phone. She's been nothing but polite and cooperative. Santos had switched to her main Instagram account, tagging not just Delta but also several civil rights organizations. Her follower count wasn't huge, but her friends were sharing rapidly. Walsh studied Sterling's identification documents with exaggerated thoroughness. Driver's license, passport, credit cards, business cards. Everything matched perfectly, but Walsh's expression suggested she was searching for inconsistencies that didn't exist. "These documents appear to be in order," Walsh admitted reluctantly. "However, given the unusual circumstances—" "What circumstances are unusual?" interrupted James Mitchell, a physician heading home to Atlanta. "A black woman in first class? In 2024? Walsh's face reddened. "Sir, please don't make this about—" "About what?" Mitchell pressed. "Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what this is about." Sterling raised one hand slightly, a gesture so subtle it almost went unnoticed. But it was enough to quiet Dr. Mitchell. She appreciated his support, but needed to control this moment herself. "Mrs. Walsh," Sterling said, reading the name tag, "I understand you're following protocols. However, I'm curious about the legal liability Delta faces when those protocols are applied selectively." Walsh blinked. "Legal liability?" Sterling's finger tapped her red portfolio once. "I assume your legal department has briefed management on recent discrimination settlements in the airline industry?" The crowd pressed closer. Chen adjusted his phone angle to capture Walsh's reaction. United Airlines paid $10,500,000, 0 cents, to Dr. David Dow in 2017. Sterling continued conversationally. American Airlines settled for $9,800,000, 0 cents, with the NADACP in 2020. Southwest faced a $7,200,000, 0 cents, class action settlement just last year. Walsh's radio crackled. "Station Manager Walsh, we need boarding completion at Gate A7 immediately." "Ma'am," Walsh said to Sterling, desperation creeping into her voice. "If you could just provide some proof of employment—" "Absolutely." Sterling opened her red portfolio for the first time. "But I'm curious, did you require employment verification from the white passenger who boarded with an identical first-class ticket 2 minutes ago?" Silence. Chen's viewer count hit 800. Someone in the comments had started researching Sterling's name online. But Sterling wasn't done. She pulled out her phone and opened her email app, scrolling to a message dated that morning. "Ms. Walsh, are you familiar with Delta's quarterly business partners meeting scheduled for today at 4:30 p.m. in Atlanta?" Walsh nodded slowly. "Yes, our senior management team attends those meetings." "Perfect, because I'd hate to be late." Sterling showed her phone screen briefly. An email with the subject line, "Business Partners Meeting Today. Attendance Required." Morrison whispered to Bradley, "What does that mean?" Bradley shrugged, but his confidence was wavering. 2 airport security officers had joined the TSA agents. The gate area now resembled a crime scene more than a boarding location. Sterling addressed the crowd for the first time. "I want to thank everyone who is documenting this interaction. Transparency matters. Truth requires witnesses." She turned back to Walsh. "Now, about that employment verification you requested." The document Sterling had been holding, the one with the Delta logo, remained partially visible. Walsh kept glancing at it, but Sterling hadn't offered to show it fully. "Ma'am, we're going to need to resolve this quickly," Walsh said. "The flight is significantly delayed." "I agree completely." Sterling checked her phone. "I have that 4:30 meeting to attend." Chen's live stream captured everything. Viewers were screenshotting and sharing across platforms. Local social media began picking up the hashtag. A voice from the crowd called out, "Just let her board. This is ridiculous." Another passenger added, "I'm posting this on LinkedIn. This is corporate discrimination at its worst." Sterling remained calm, but those watching closely noticed she had positioned herself so that every camera angle was clear. Every word was being captured, every reaction documented. "Miss Walsh," Sterling said quietly, "before we continue, I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. She held up her phone, showing 17 missed calls from the same number. These calls are from my business partner. They're wondering why I'm not answering. Walsh's radio erupted with static and urgent voices requesting status updates. They're also wondering, Sterling continued, why social media is exploding with videos of Delta employees detaining their... She paused, smiling that small, knowing smile again. Well, perhaps it's time for that employment verification you requested. Morrison stepped forward, eagerly. Yes, finally. What company do you work for? Sterling looked directly into Chen's camera, then at Santos, recording on Instagram, then at the 3 other passengers who had started filming. I think it's better if I show you. She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a second document. This one wasn't partially hidden. This one she held up for everyone to see. The Delta logo was prominent at the top. Below it, in official corporate letterhead formatting, were words that made Walsh stumble backward. Chen zoomed in with his phone camera, trying to read the document. His viewers were typing frantically, trying to piece together what was happening. But Sterling wasn't ready to reveal everything yet. She folded the document and placed it back in her briefcase. Actually, she said, I'd prefer to handle this privately. Ms. Walsh, is there somewhere we can speak alone? No, shouted Dr. Mitchell. Whatever you have to say, say it here, in front of witnesses. The crowd murmured agreement. Chen's viewers were demanding transparency. Sterling considered this for a moment, then nodded. You're right. Transparency is important. She looked directly at Walsh, then at Morrison, then at Bradley. Ms. Walsh, you asked for employment verification. You asked about my ability to afford first-class tickets. You questioned my documentation and demanded proof of my right to be here. Her voice remained calm, but something had shifted, an energy that made everyone lean in closer. I'm going to give you exactly what you asked for. Sterling opened her briefcase completely and withdrew a thick document bound in Delta's corporate colors. The cover page read, Delta Airlines Business Partnership Agreement, Confidential. She flipped to page 12 and held it up so Walsh could see clearly. DS Holdings, Sterling read aloud. Strategic Partnership Value, $45 million, 0 cents annually. Contract duration, 5 years, renewable. Walsh's face drained of color as she read the highlighted section. DS Holdings, Sterling continued conversationally. Dr. Sterling Holdings, my company provides logistics consulting and diversity training services to Delta Airlines. The gate area fell silent except for the sound of Chen's phone capturing every word for his 1,200 viewers. Morrison looked confused. What does that mean? Bradley, who had started to understand, grabbed Morrison's arm. It means she's one of Delta's major business partners. The words hit the crowd like a physical force. Passengers pulled out phones frantically. Santos's Instagram Live exploded with viewers sharing and commenting. Sterling wasn't finished. She reached into her red portfolio and withdrew another document. This one was bound in leather with official seals. Partnership meeting agenda for today, 4:30 p.m., she announced. Item number 3, Annual Discrimination Incident Review. Item number 4, Crisis Management Protocol Updates. Walsh stumbled backward, reaching for her radio. I need the regional manager immediately. That won't be necessary, Sterling said gently. But I do appreciate your concern for proper protocol. She checked her phone again. 18 missed calls now. My team is probably wondering why I'm not responding. Chen's live stream had reached 1,500 viewers. Comments flooded in faster than anyone could read them. Someone had already posted screenshots to Twitter, where Delta partner boarding was beginning to trend locally. Dr. Mitchell laughed out loud. Unbelievable. Sterling addressed the crowd directly. I want to thank everyone for documenting this interaction. These moments matter. They show us who we are when we think no one important is watching. Morrison had gone pale. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Sterling replied without malice. That's exactly the point. Walsh's radio crackled to life. Station manager Walsh, we're getting calls from corporate about social media posts. What's the situation at Gate A7? Sterling smiled. A real smile this time, not the knowing expression she'd worn earlier. You can tell corporate that Dr. Sterling is handling the situation personally. The TSA officers looked at each other uncertainly. Officer Davis stepped forward. Ma'am, are we still needed here? That depends, Sterling said, looking at Walsh. Are we still concerned about my employment verification? Walsh was fumbling with her radio, trying to contact her superiors while processing what had just happened. Dr. Sterling, please, I had no idea you were a business partner. Stop. Sterling's voice remained calm but carried new authority. This isn't about me. It's about the pattern. She opened her red portfolio fully for the first time. Inside were dozens of printed documents, charts, and photographs. Annual discrimination complaints filed against Delta, up 89% year-over-year, she read from the top sheet. Customer satisfaction scores among minority travelers, down 23%. She flipped to another page. Revenue impact. We've lost approximately $8 million, 0 cents, in diversity FEMACT corporate contracts in the past 18 months. Walsh's radio erupted with static and urgent voices requesting updates. Sterling continued reading. Legal exposure. 6 pending discrimination lawsuits currently in litigation. Average settlement cost $1,200,000, 0 cents per case. She looked up at the cameras still recording. This isn't about Dr. Amara Sterling being inconvenienced. This is about a pattern of behavior that's costing Delta money, reputation, and partnerships. A regional supervisor finally arrived, 30 minutes after the incident began. Marcus Thompson appeared, jogging through the gate area. Someone had finally connected the dots and called middle management. Dr. Sterling, Thompson called out, breathless. I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. Sterling nodded at Thompson. Marcus, I was hoping to discuss this privately in Atlanta, but circumstances have evolved. Thompson looked around at the cameras, the crowd, the social media documentation happening in real time. His face showed the exact moment he realized how bad this could get. How can we fix this immediately? Thompson asked. Sterling gestured toward the live streams and recordings. Fix what, Marcus? The discrimination? Or the documentation of the discrimination? Chen's viewer count had hit 2,000. Someone in the comments had posted Sterling's LinkedIn profile, showing her consulting work with major corporations. Both, Thompson said quickly. All of it. Whatever you need. Sterling closed her portfolio but kept it in her hands. What I need is for Delta to become the airline that prevents these situations instead of explaining them afterward. She turned toward Chen's camera. Everyone who's watching this, thank you. Thank you for being witnesses. Thank you for demanding better. Then she addressed Thompson directly, but loudly enough for everyone to hear. I'm proposing immediate bias interruption training for customer service employees at major hubs, starting within 90 days. Thompson nodded rapidly. Absolutely. Done. Plus implementation of the bias reporting system we discussed in our last partnership review. Yes, of course. And diverse hiring accountability for management positions, with quarterly progress reports. The crowd began to applaud, but Sterling raised her hand for quiet. But Marcus, if Delta isn't ready to commit to meaningful change, if this is just damage control, then DS Holdings will need to reconsider our $45 million, 0 cents, annual partnership. The threat hung in the air like a thunderclap. Thompson's eyes widened as he calculated the impact of losing their largest diversity consulting contract. Dr. Sterling, I give you my word. We'll implement every change you've suggested. Sterling nodded once. Good, because the partnership meeting starts in 45 minutes, and this will be our primary agenda item. She turned to Walsh, who was still holding her radio like a lifeline. Ms. Walsh, I'm going to board my flight now. But first, I want to thank you. Walsh looked confused. Thank me? Yes. You've helped me demonstrate why these changes are necessary. Your actions today will probably save Delta millions in future settlements and lost partnerships. Sterling picked up her briefcase and headed toward the boarding door. Oh, and Ms. Walsh, she called over her shoulder, you might want to call corporate back. Tell them Dr. Sterling says the situation at gate A7 is resolved. She paused at the boarding door and looked back at the crowd, at the cameras, at the documentation of everything that had just happened. Change happens when people refuse to be invisible, she said. Thank you for making sure none of this was invisible. Chen ended his live stream at 2,400 viewers. Santos stopped recording. The other passengers put away their phones. But the documentation was already spreading across social media platforms. And Dr. Amara Sterling walked onto her flight, first class, exactly as she had planned. Sterling settled into seat 2A as passengers filed past her, many offering subtle nods of support. The businessman from the gate area stopped briefly. Thank you for handling that with such dignity, Dr. Mitchell said quietly. Sterling smiled. Thank you for speaking up when it mattered. The flight attendant who had originally questioned her boarding pass approached hesitantly. Dr. Sterling, I want to apologize for my colleague's behavior at the gate. What's your name? Sterling asked gently. Jennifer Nash. Jennifer, have you received comprehensive bias training in your role here? Jennifer shook her head. We had a brief session during orientation, but nothing in depth. Sterling made a note in her phone. That's going to change. As the plane pushed back from the gate, 32 minutes behind schedule, Sterling opened her laptop and began composing an email to Delta's partnership management team. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thompson. Dr. Sterling, please call me when you land. I want to discuss immediate next steps for your proposals. Another message appeared from Delta's VP of Customer Experience, Patricia Williams. Amara. Just saw the social media reports. Can we schedule an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning? Sterling typed back, I'll be in Atlanta through Friday. Let's make it productive. During the flight, Sterling worked on her laptop while monitoring social media responses. Chen's TikTok video had reached 23,000 views. Santos's Instagram story had been shared by several local news accounts. More importantly, other passengers were sharing their own stories in the comments. Black professionals recounting similar experiences. Flight attendants describing pressure to question certain passengers. Airport employees admitting to unconscious bias in their daily interaction. Sterling screenshot dozens of these stories. Each one became evidence for the presentation she was building. When the plane landed in Atlanta, Sterling was among the first passengers off. Thompson waited at the gate with two other mid-level managers she recognized from previous partnership meetings. Dr. Sterling, I cannot express how sorry... Thompson began. Sterling held up her hand. Marcus, save the apologies for the meeting room. Right now, I need data. She handed him a printed list from her briefcase. Current diversity statistics for Delta management at major hubs. Employee complaint logs for the past year. Customer service incident reports categorized by passenger demographics. Thompson looked at the list, overwhelmed. This will take several hours to compile. You have until tomorrow morning, Sterling said, checking her watch. Partnership review meeting starts at 9 a.m. sharp. She walked toward the Delta Sky Club to prepare her presentation. Behind her, Thompson was already making urgent phone calls. The next morning at 8:45 a.m., Sterling entered the Delta Partnership Conference Room. The emergency session had drawn Thompson, VP Williams, two regional managers, and the head of legal affairs. Before we begin, Sterling announced, setting her red portfolio on the conference table, I want everyone to watch something. She connected her laptop to the room's screen and played Chen's TikTok video. The room fell silent as they watched Sterling being questioned, documented, and ultimately revealed as a major business partner. When the video ended, Sterling opened her portfolio. Current social media metrics, she began, displaying charts on the screen. TikTok, 23,000 views, 3,400 shares, 82% negative sentiment toward Delta. Instagram, 18,000 impressions, trending in Chicago area. Twitter, Delta partner boarding has 4,700 mentions in the past 24 hours. Regional Manager Robert Chen raised his hand. What's our projected impact? Sterling clicked to the next slide. Conservative estimate. $2,300,000, 0 cents in lost bookings over the next 6 months, if this narrative spreads. Plus potential legal costs if this pattern continues. She advanced to her recommendations. However, if Delta implements comprehensive bias prevention measures, we project a 15% improvement in customer satisfaction scores and reduced complaint handling costs. VP Williams leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? Sterling had been preparing for this question for months. The incident at O'Hare had simply provided the perfect catalyst. 3-phase implementation plan, she announced, displaying a detailed timeline. Phase 1. Bias interruption training for customer-facing employees at 10 major hubs. 8,500 people trained within 120 days. She clicked to cost projections. $650,000, 0 cents investment, with measurable ROI within 9 months through reduced complaint handling and improved customer retention. Phase 2. Pilot program for passenger feedback app at 5 airports. Real-time bias incident reporting with management response protocols. Regional Manager Sarah Martinez asked, Implementation timeline? Sterling smiled. 6-month development and testing phase, followed by gradual rollout based on pilot results. She advanced to the final slide. Phase 3. Diversity accountability measures for management hiring at major hubs with quarterly progress reviews. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Sterling waited for quiet, then delivered her bottom line. DS Holdings has partnered with Delta for 3 years. We've provided consulting services during challenging periods, but yesterday's incident represents a pattern that threatens our partnership. She stood and walked to the window overlooking the Atlanta skyline. Social media doesn't forget. Viral videos create lasting impressions. Yesterday, 23,000 people watched Delta employees discriminate against a passenger who turned out to be a major business partner. She turned back to face the group. Tomorrow, those same 23,000 people will watch Delta either announce meaningful change or offer standard apologies. VP Williams asked, And if we implement your proposals? Delta becomes a leader in bias prevention. Other airlines follow our example. We attract diversity-conscious travelers and corporate accounts. Partnership relationships strengthen. Sterling returned to her seat. And if we don't? She let the question hang in the air. DS Holdings evaluates other partnership opportunities. We redirect our $45 million, 0 cents annual contract to airlines that understand that discrimination is bad business. Regional Manager Thompson ran calculations on his tablet. Losing our largest diversity consulting contract would impact multiple departments. It would, Sterling agreed, but that's not a threat. It's simply a business reality. She opened her phone and showed recent messages. I've already received inquiries from 2 other airlines asking about potential consulting partnerships. VP Williams looked around the room at her colleagues. Several were nodding. Dr. Sterling, if we approve these initiatives, what's our timeline for implementation? Sterling consulted her notes. Bias Training Pilot Program begins within 60 days. App development starts immediately with beta testing in 6 months. Diversity hiring measures start with all management positions posted after next month. And you'll personally oversee the consulting implementation? BS Holdings will assign a dedicated team with quarterly progress reviews and annual contract assessments. She stood again. But I want to be clear about something. This isn't about Dr. Amara Sterling being personally offended. This is about Delta choosing to lead industry improvement instead of being forced into it by lawsuits and social media crises. The partnership team voted to approve a modified version of Sterling's 3-phase proposal with extended timelines and pilot testing requirements. As the meeting ended, VP Williams approached Sterling privately. "Amara, I'm embarrassed this happened, but I'm grateful it happened to someone with the expertise and vision to turn it into meaningful change." Sterling shook her hand. "Patricia, what happened yesterday wasn't unique. It happens to Black professionals regularly. The only difference is that this time it was documented and the victim had leverage." She gathered her materials. "Now, let's make sure it happens less frequently. To everyone." Within 90 days of the partnership meeting, Delta's pilot program began with carefully measured implementation. VP Williams personally called gate agent Lisa Morrison. The conversation was professional but clear. "Lisa, you'll be participating in our new bias intervention training program. Upon successful completion, you'll continue in your current role with additional mentoring support." Morrison, who had spent 2 days watching herself in viral social media posts, accepted the opportunity gratefully. Station manager Rebecca Walsh received a similar call. Her development plan included bias training plus leadership coaching. "You'll also be participating in our new employee feedback program," Williams explained, both receiving and providing constructive guidance. Tom Bradley, the supervisor who had supported Morrison's actions, was selected for Delta's pilot management training program. His assignment: helping develop bias interruption protocols for frontline employees. But Sterling wasn't interested in punishment. She was focused on prevention. The Delta Feedback app launched in beta testing at 5 major airports within 6 months. Passengers could report service concerns in real time, with complaints routed to trained supervisors empowered to respond within hours, not days. The app's system analyzed patterns, flagging employees or locations with multiple complaints for additional coaching. More importantly, it tracked positive interactions, recognizing employees who consistently provided excellent service to all passengers. Jennifer Nash, the flight attendant who had apologized to Sterling, became one of the first employees recruited for Delta's new customer advocacy program. Her role involved supporting colleagues and monitoring service quality. "Dr. Sterling changed my perspective completely," Nash explained during a company newsletter interview. "I realized that treating everyone with dignity isn't just morally right, it's essential for customer loyalty." The bias interruption training program exceeded expectations. Instead of typical corporate diversity presentations, Sterling's team developed interactive scenarios based on real incidents. Employees practiced de-escalation techniques, learned to recognize unconscious bias triggers, and gained tools for appropriately escalating situations. The most powerful element: video testimonials from passengers who had experienced discrimination, explaining the impact on their travel decisions and brand loyalty. Jake Chen, whose TikTok live stream had documented the original incident, was invited to participate in Delta's first customer experience conference. His presentation, titled "The Power of Documentation," emphasized how passenger voices create accountability. "When people know they're being observed," Chen explained to the audience of 200 Delta employees, "they make more thoughtful choices. But more importantly, when passengers see employees standing up for fairness, they develop stronger brand loyalty." Chen's conference presentation received positive feedback and was shared internally as training material. Maria Santos, who had documented the incident on Instagram, provided feedback for Delta's social media guidelines for handling bias incidents. Her input helped create the Listen First, Respond Fast protocol for addressing passenger concerns online. The program's initial metrics showed promise. Within 6 months, customer complaints related to discriminatory treatment decreased by 34% at pilot locations. Employee satisfaction scores increased by 12%. Corporate bookings from diversity-focused companies increased by 18% at test airports. More significantly, 2 other airlines inquired about licensing Delta's training approach. United Airlines announced their own Service Excellence Initiative. American Airlines launched Dignity First customer service training. Sterling had influenced an industry trend, but the individual transformations were equally meaningful. Lisa Morrison completed her bias training and returned to work with renewed focus. She volunteered to mentor new employees, sharing her experience as a learning opportunity about the importance of treating every passenger with respect. I learned that making assumptions about people based on their appearance isn't just wrong, it's counterproductive, Morrison explained during a training video. Every passenger deserves professional service, regardless of my initial impressions. Morrison's honesty about her mistakes made her an effective peer educator. New employees related to her experience while understanding the importance of bias awareness. Rebecca Walsh became a frequent speaker at airport management conferences. Her presentation, From Crisis to Culture Change, detailed how the O'Hare incident led to systematic improvement efforts. Dr. Sterling could have ended my career, Walsh admitted during her keynote at the Airport Management Association conference. Instead, she provided tools to become a better leader. That's the difference between punishment and progress. The diversity hiring accountability measures produced gradual results. Within 12 months, Delta's management team at pilot locations showed measurable demographic improvements. More importantly, the diverse perspectives enhanced decision-making across departments. Sterling established a scholarship fund through DS Holdings, providing $500,000 0 annually for underrepresented students pursuing careers in hospitality management and customer service. The fund's first scholarship recipient was Marcus Thompson, Jr., a college sophomore from Chicago studying business management. His essay, titled Turning Discrimination into Opportunity, described watching Sterling's viral video and deciding to pursue a career in hospitality leadership. "I want to be the person who prevents these situations," Marcus Jr. wrote. Dr. Sterling showed me that real change comes from improving systems, not just individual interactions. Northwestern University's Business School added Sterling's case study to their organizational behavior curriculum. Students analyzed her approach to transforming corporate culture through strategic partnership leverage and documented accountability. The case study's title, Partnership Power: How One Consultant Grounded Discrimination Through Strategic Influence. Sterling's methodology became a model for other consultants. Hotels began implementing bias reporting systems. Retail chains developed inclusion training programs. Even restaurants started using Sterling's documentation for accountability approach. The long-term impact exceeded initial projections. 18 months after the O'Hare incident, customer satisfaction scores at pilot airports had improved significantly. Discrimination complaints across test locations had decreased by 45%. More importantly, a generation of service industry employees had learned that treating customers with dignity wasn't just morally correct, it was strategically essential for business success. Sterling's systematic approach had succeeded because it focused on processes rather than individuals, prevention rather than punishment, and documentation rather than confrontation. The incident that began with discrimination had evolved into sustainable improvement. 2 years after the O'Hare incident, Dr. Amara Sterling received an invitation to speak at the National Customer Service Excellence Summit. The theme, Documentation and Dignity, How Evidence Creates Lasting Change. Standing before an audience of industry professionals, business leaders, and hospitality students, Sterling reflected on the journey that began with a simple boarding pass question. "Real power isn't about raising your voice," she began. "It's about raising standards systematically." The summit organizers had prepared a video montage showing the ripple effects of her approach. Airlines had adopted bias prevention programs. Other service industries had implemented dignity-focused training. Business schools taught case studies based on her methodology. But Sterling was most proud of the individual transformations. Lisa Morrison had been promoted to training coordinator, helping lead Delta's bias prevention program. Rebecca Walsh now served as customer experience manager at Atlanta Hub. Tom Bradley had become a regional training supervisor. Every person involved in that original incident became an agent of positive change, Sterling explained to the summit audience. That's what happens when you focus on growth instead of punishment. Jake Chen had leveraged his viral documentation into a part-time role as a social media consultant for passenger advocacy organizations. His nonprofit project, Document for Change, trained citizens to record discrimination incidents effectively and safely. Maria Santos had become a freelance social media consultant, specializing in crisis communication for hospitality companies. Her client base included regional airlines and hotel chains seeking to prevent viral discrimination incidents. The Delta Feedback app had been expanded to all major Delta hubs after successful pilot testing. Over 200,000 customer interactions had been logged through the platform, with 76% of concerns resolved to passenger satisfaction within 24 hours. Sterling's DS Holdings had expanded its consulting practice, working with airlines, hotels, and retail chains committed to measurable inclusion improvements. The company's success rate, measured by reduced discrimination complaints and improved customer satisfaction, exceeded industry standards by 28%. The scholarship program had grown to support 200 students annually. Recipients worked in hospitality, customer service, and business leadership roles across the country. Each carried forward Sterling's philosophy. Systematic dignity creates sustainable change. But the most meaningful transformation was cultural. A generation of service industry workers now understood that discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was professionally destructive. Customer service training programs emphasized respect and fairness as core business competencies. Young professionals entering the workforce had grown up watching Sterling's viral video and similar incidents. They understood that everyone deserves professional treatment, regardless of assumptions about their background or circumstances. Sterling's approach had become a framework. Document truth, demand accountability, focus on systems rather than individuals, and always choose sustainable improvement over temporary revenge. The Harvard Business Review featured Sterling in their annual Consulting Impact Spotlight. The headline, "The Consultant Who Grounded Discrimination: How Strategic Partnerships Transform Industries." But Sterling preferred a different measure of success. 1 month before the Customer Service Summit, she had flown Delta from Chicago to Atlanta, Gate A7, same route, same first-class seat. The gate agent, a young woman named Destiny Williams, processed Sterling's boarding pass with professional efficiency and genuine warmth. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Sterling. Thank you for choosing Delta today." No questions about employment verification. No suspicious glances at credit cards. No assumptions about belonging. Just excellence in customer service, applied consistently to every passenger. That moment, ordinary, respectful, professional, represented everything Sterling had worked to achieve. As she concluded her summit speech, Sterling addressed the camera recording for later broadcast. "These stories matter because they show how quiet persistence creates lasting change. Real-life experiences like this prove that true influence comes from improving systems, not just individual situations. She paused, looking directly into the camera. And have you witnessed discrimination in travel, at work, or in daily life? Share your story responsibly and constructively. Document truth respectfully but persistently. If this inspired you, consider how you can improve the systems around you. Share this message to show how one person's strategic approach can ground injustice and lift us all. Your voice matters. Your documentation matters. Together, we create accountability and demand better. Because change happens when people refuse to accept the status quo, and you have the power to make sure progress continues.